Alrighty. Ooh. Hello, everyone. I'm Vanessa, and I'm really excited to be here this afternoon and get to chat to you about how we can leverage the intelligence and the sensors in our collaboration devices to enable smarter workplace experiences. Now, some of the stuff I'm going to focus on is brand new. I actually only got access to EFT and beta code last week, and so I was madly creating slides to add to the session. So some really cool stuff that I want to share with you. I'll focus on some of the new updates, some of the new stuff that's now in EFT and beta, so coming shortly. A little bit, tiny bit on roadmap. Normally we try and stick to what is imminent in these sessions, but they're areas. And then I'll talk about some of the other capabilities, how they actually work together with some of the new functionality. And we're going to focus on 3 key use cases. So we're going to focus on smart workspaces visibility. We're going to focus on smarter space usage methods, so a whole raft of ad hoc usage things that we've just enabled, but also room booking automation and enhancements there, and then some updates to the analytics, so some great things that are happening on the Workspace Analytics side. Now, as I just said, I've got a whole raft of stuff that I want to share with you, and we've only got an hour. So if you've got any questions, if you please pop them in the Webex app space and I'll get to them after the session, or you can come and see me after the session and ask me questions. Now, all of us have seen and felt how the way we work has changed over the last few years, and in particular, the way people are using the workplace, right? We've seen big changes in the workplace cadence, but we've also seen a real increase in the collaborative activities that are happening in our workplaces. And this is putting increased demand on meeting spaces, particularly those connected meeting spaces. So what we're also seeing is a rise in some of the common workplace challenges, like being able to find truly available space. A knock-on effect of that rise in meeting space usage is also been an increase in meeting room booking misuse. Right? Those ghosted meeting rooms that are booked and nobody arrives to use them, or overbooked, rooms that are booked for 2 hours and get used for probably less than half of that, or that person that keeps booking the 10-person room and it's only one person in that room. And so we're seeing that, and there's nothing more frustrating than going to book a room, not knowing that the person that booked it a month ago has no intention of coming into the office that day. But they're not going to change the meeting because they've got all the virtual meeting details in there, right? They're still going to join that meeting. They're just not going to release that room. And so using automation to be able to do that is now becoming an imperative. Being able to ad hoc walk up and instantly reserve and use space that appears to be free. Right? If we want to get the most efficient and effective use out of our workspaces, then we need to give the users options where they can just walk up and use that space. Now, on the other side of the coin, facilities and corporate real estate are desperate for actual workspace usage data so that they can use that to continually optimize that workspace environment. And these are the areas that we're going to focus on. Now, the most effective and the most successful workplace transformations and workspace refreshes are when there is synergy between the space design, the tech, and the organisational and workplace policies. And the tech actually becomes the glue here. It's the tech that brings that physical space design to life, but it's also the tech that enables and enforces those workspace and organisational policies. And this tech is both techniques and technology working together in these spaces. And techniques like purposeful creation of workspace types aligned to the usage intent. So what is that space going to be used for? Using and leveraging different space usage models, blending ad hoc space usage with room booking and automation, but then also applying some policies, like the maximum booking times on smaller spaces. Those 1 and 2 person spaces, they should only be bookable for 1 hour, 2 hours, so people don't camp in those spaces. On-site only booking is becoming very popular. So having spaces, particularly those medium-sized rooms, that they can only be booked when you're physically in the office. You're much more likely to use the space if you're in the office that day. Now, and then marrying that with technology like real-time space visibility, so you can understand what space is actually available and what space is in use. Automation, to instantly check in when we know that there is people in the room, and more importantly, release the room when nobody arrives to use the room. Now, all the while, collecting, collating and aggregating all of this data so that we can provide detailed workspace analytics. Now, Cisco is using these techniques and technologies in all of our new and refreshed offices. And we've got a rolling program where we're refreshing all of our offices worldwide. There's a whole raft of them that's been done here in the US. They've had some fanfare about all the big ones that have been done that we're desperately in need of doing over in Europe. But I'm very, very fortunate. Our Sydney office got done over the New Year, so we shut for about 5 weeks and redid the whole office environment. And so it's similar to Pen 1, to any of those of you that have been to New York or our Atlanta offices. And we're using these techniques and technology to effectively do a blend of ad hoc and scheduled use of space, leveraging the automation. And I'm going to tell you all of the different capabilities and techniques that we're using, and it really is allowing us to get a much more efficient and effective use of our workspaces. Now, these are some of the capabilities that is alleviating those common workplace challenges. Smart workspace visibility allows us to know the instant status of that space, find truly available space. We know if that space is in use or if it's available. Automation, ways that we can go up and instantly use ad hoc spaces, but also how we can release those rooms that are booked and nobody has arrived to use the room. Smarter in-room experiences. We're not going to focus on that today, but there's a lot of work that we're doing to ensure that the experience in the room and the experience for those that are connecting remote is equal. And then detailed analytics. And I'll talk about meeting zones become very important, not just for that great visual framing of people in the room, but true analytics. So we know who it is, the people that we want to count in the room. Now, underlying all of this is data. And it's sensor-based data from our collaboration devices that is going to give you the visibility, the capabilities, and the automation in those meeting spaces. Now, to help you make decisions, and the great thing is those sensor capabilities are right across our collaboration devices from the smallest to the largest. And to help you make decisions on the right device and peripherals for each one of your different size and shaped spaces, those small, medium, those open spaces, we released Workspace Designer at the end of the year. I hope all of you have gone and checked out Workspace Designer. If you haven't, I was reminded of the short code. It's cs.co/WD for Workspace Designer, very easy to find. It's continually being updated. Just before Cisco Live Amsterdam, we added the training rooms and the auditoriums. They will be adding more over the next couple of days. There is peripherals in there, cable guidance. There's so much that continually gets added every couple of weeks in Workspace Designer. So if you went once and thought, yep, that's a pretty good tool, continually go back because you'll get more and more each time you use the Workspace Designer tool. Now, the other thing I mentioned, that purposeful creation of workspace types aligned to that usage intent. We're doing that in all of the Cisco refreshed and new offices. And we've got a palette, and there is about 32 different space types, from small touchdown spaces, huddle spaces, open spaces, right up to those large multi-purpose training spaces as well. And not only do we have Workspace Designer to give us the guidance on device and peripherals, but physical design guides as well. Orientation of rooms, furniture choices, all of the things that we've made decisions on across all of those different workspace types that you can leverage to look when you start refreshing your workspaces. Now, as I mentioned, there's some really cool things that we're doing with the AI Director to improve that in-meeting experience. And so what we're going to look at is how can we be smarter about everything right up to the moment that we connect to the meeting. And that could be any type of meeting, whether we're connecting to a Microsoft meeting, a Webex meeting, a Zoom meeting, or a Google meeting. You probably have already been to sessions today where they've talked about some of the great updates that we're doing with cinematic meetings, experiences, and there'll be more during the week. Now, I want to start with smart workspace visibility. This is one that frustrates everybody when they go and they look in calendar and it says every room is booked. But they walk around the floor and it looks like nearly every room is available. How can we provide real-time visibility of what's actually happening in space? Now, we made the decision in Cisco, when we started seeing that increased demand in meeting spaces, to move to almost a primarily ad hoc only model on our employee floors. Now that we've got all the automation, we're starting to do a really good balance and blend there. But one of the key reasons for success in this ad hoc use of space has been real-time visibility of what is happening in that space. And we've got two feature-rich but complementary solutions that allow you to see exactly what's going on. We've got on that side, we've got all of the UI updates and capabilities updates that have been done to the RoomOS Navigator booking panels. And gives you visibility right across the floor, whether a room is in use, whether it's available, or whether it's booked and nobody has yet arrived to use that room. And the other option is the Cisco Spaces Smart Workspaces solution. Now, Cisco Spaces, for any of you that aren't that familiar with it, you will see the maps all over the place this week, and it's worth actually going and interacting with those maps. It's our cloud-based location management and analytics platform. But in the last couple of years, they've been opening it up to new use cases. One of the great ones for workplaces is the smart workspaces, rich maps, and all the detailed analytics that they do. Now here, this solves two of those challenges: finding truly available space and understanding space occupancy and environmental metrics, real-time and detailed analytics metrics and trends. And so we'll have a look at how the Cisco Spaces solution can do that. So when we bring together that data that we have in Control Hub on our workspaces, the sensor data that we get from our collaboration devices, and then couple that with the extensibility of the Cisco Spaces platform, that's how we can provide the smart workspaces visibility. And this will enhance both the user experience with real-time visibility and that facilities admin experience with detailed analytics. And I've got examples of some of all of the reports that you can provide to your facilities admins, your corporate real estate in the appendix. I couldn't fit them all in to the session, but I've definitely put them in there for you. Now, there's three key elements to the Smart Spaces solution. There is the sensor-enabled hardware, because we can't measure or manage what we can't see. So you need visibility. Then that sensed hardware is used by the Spaces OS platform. And the Spaces team call this the OS for Smart Spaces. And it takes this data, and what it does is adds location and context. And then this contextualized data is then exposed both real-time and has historical analytics through Cisco Spaces apps, but also extended out to third-party apps. So partner apps can leverage it. It's got a very robust API, was called the Firehose API, now called the Meta API, that you can extend to third-party apps, or there's systems like your enterprise management systems. If you've got integrated workplace management systems, you can extend that data to as well. Now, starting at that sensor-based, the hardware-enabled layer for our sensors, the great news here is it's very likely that you've already got all of these sensor sources across your environment today. So Spaces can take all of the data from our Cisco and Meraki wired and wireless infrastructure, and that's going to provide location and occupancy details. They also act as IoT and BLE gateways. The Meraki cameras that you may have for physical security, they now do AI head and shoulder detection. So they can count the number of people that are entering each of the entry points to every one of your floors. And so we can use that for occupancy tracking as well. The Meraki sensors can do environmental sensing. They do temperature, they do CO2, which the collaboration devices don't do. So if you want to measure CO2 in those environments. Now, the Cisco Spaces platform also has an extensive marketplace of IoT sensors that are supported. So if there's other things that you need to sense for in your environment, you can integrate those. But it is the collaboration devices that provide us the detailed visibility, particularly in our meeting spaces. They detect room presence. So we know as soon as someone opens the door and walks into that room, then we know that room is now occupied. That then kicks off the AI people count. And that's done in that half-wake mode, so it's actually done passively. So we start counting the number of people in the room, even if they're just going in there for a physical meeting. It can detect all the noise levels. We get the noise levels and ambient noise of the room. So the ambient noise when there's nobody in the room. It detects the temperature, humidity, and air quality in the room. Now, this is important from a comfort level perspective, but you'll see with the Cisco Spaces platform, we're also using this for automation to the building management system to optimize the environment in the room as well. Now, this data is used for real-time visibility and also that detailed analytics. And we'll see with the room booking, it's also used for automation. You know, this is how we can know if people are in the room and release the room, because we know even though it was booked, nobody's arrived to use that room. Now, this is the Smart Spaces digital map. I'm sure many of you have seen this map. You may not have interacted with it. What you see here, what I love about this view is the majority of the data here is actually coming from the collaboration devices in the meeting rooms. One of the brand new things I'm going to talk about is they've just enabled desk booking as well and desk visibility. And I got access in my Spaces tenant to enable it last week. And so I've got some screenshots a little later on. But here in this map, green is rooms that are available. Red is rooms where the people count and room present sensors have detected people in the room. Orange is rooms that are booked, but nobody's yet arrived to use that room. And when you select an individual room, you can see that detailed visibility inside the room. So we see Coney Island is occupied. There's 9 people in there. We see the temperature, humidity, air quality, and the ambient noise levels in the room, and also booking status. Now, we've got 2 types of booking now, but to go alongside hybrid calendar booking, we can also do local bookings. And those local bookings are for if you don't want to tie a mailbox to a room and you want to do on-site only booking, we'll also have that booking status so you can see if the room is booked later in the day. Some of the new things that are on the latest version of the map, we've had the ability to do hold. So you could put a hold on a room, let everybody know that you've selected a room. You've got this as an interactive 3D map. You've put a hold on the room and it gives you time to make your way over to the room. But you can also get directions. Now, pathfinding is localized to the map. They also have the option of enabling wayfinding. Now, when you enable wayfinding, that'll give you turn-by-turn directions on your mobile. You'll scan a QR code, but that requires that you've got either Cisco or Meraki wireless infrastructures, you've got location services turned on. This pathfinding is available on the map. Now, the way we get these maps is the Cisco Spaces platform takes the CAD drawings of your floor plans, puts them through an AI process, and it creates this 3D interactive rich map. Now, up until now, this has predominantly been used as digital signage. So we've had it on kiosks, you could have had it on different collaboration devices, had it available, was available as URLs, but really they were unauthenticated URLs. What has just hit EFT is a SSO authenticated web-based app experience called Space Explorer, and I'll show you a few screenshots of that. So which means people will be able to see visibility of room status and also desks before they even go into the office. So they'll have access to this map, which is really cool. Now, one of the things with the putting the room on hold, if you weren't always looking at one of the kiosks or the map, we actually integrate the map into Webex app, and so on the Spaces you can see the map for the different locations. You didn't know that somebody put the room on hold unless you were inside the room. There was a message on the device in the room. One of the guys in my team actually wrote a macro to update the Navigator panels outside the room so you can see that hold visibility. Vanessa's put a hold on the room. She's making her way over there to use that room. This is how the Webex device telemetry lights up that rich map. That room presence detection, so the people detection, gives us our available or occupied status. The hybrid calendar status, and I'll need to update this, the local booking status as well, will give us whether the room is booked later in the day. The workspace capacity, and I'm sure some of you will be guilty like I am, when you create a workspace in Control Hub, you may not always set the workspace capacity, and the default comes up if you choose meeting room, I think it's 4 people. This is actually important because this will set the room size on the map. So if you set your workspace capacity, it'll map it to the room size. Current people out of call, as soon as we've walked in, starts counting the amount of people. That'll give us how many people are in the room. Environmental metrics actually come from the Navigator panels. And this was purposely done because you don't, with the codecs, so say the Room Bar Pros, or if we've got the EQX, etc., we don't actually want to know what the temperature, humidity, and air quality is behind a screen. What we want to know is where the temperature, humidity, and air quality on the table where everybody's sitting, where the Navigator panel is. And so that's where the environmental sensors are. Obviously, in those small rooms where you'd have a desk device or a Navigator, one of the all-in-ones, we build in the environmental sensors into those as well. And then the codecs themselves to the ambient noise detection. Ooh, one thing to point out there before I move on. Workspace occupancy metrics and environmental metrics are disabled by default in Control Hub. Not every customer wants their rooms counting the number of people in there. You can now enable it globally, so any devices that are capable of capturing the metrics will start capturing them, and then you can selectively turn it off. So if you've got a boardroom, for instance, that you may want to turn it off, you could turn it off for those rooms. To integrate the two solutions together, the Cisco Spaces team created a workspace integration. So any of you that have seen the workspace integrations, great thing about them is exposes the system that it's integrating to, and so we've got two cloud systems, the Spaces cloud talking to the Webex Control Hub cloud. It then has access to all of the XAPIs, all of the data from Control Hub on all of the status changes of the devices that we specify the location and the floors that Spaces has access to. And so all of that data will go across. You also choose which devices you might want to run the digital map on as signage. The first thing that you do, now I've had the opportunity to configure this solution over a dozen times, but I also created a Spaces Control Hub Integration Lab for a Workspace bootcamp that I ran last year. So I proctored about 300 engineers going through this lab. So I learned a lot of good practices. And one of the best practices, and we can't help ourselves as IT engineers, first thing that we want to do when we've got one system that we want to talk to another, we want to connect them together. That's the last thing that we do. And the reason is, if we get the Cisco Spaces environment ready and the Control Hub environment ready first, then there's a whole raft of automation that happens. It'll actually automatically map your workspaces to the room names on that rich digital map, which is pretty cool. I've put all of the steps in the, all the configuration steps, all of the tips and tricks that we learnt in the appendix for you. We don't have time to go through on the ins and outs today. I'm just going to point out a couple of things to be mindful of. One, it does take a bit of time from your CAD drawings to get the AI digital map processed. And when I say a bit of time, it can be up to a week, depending on how robust your CAD files are. They're turning them around 24 hours, 48 hours, if you've got pretty good CAD files. And it has some guidelines now when you go to upload them on what details we need. We do now support vectorized PDFs as well. So if your facilities people have vectorized PDFs, we can upload those. You do need to align the location details between Cisco Spaces and Control Hub. And this is important. When we connect the two together, it'll merge those locations. What we want is those address details and geo coordinates to be in sync, because otherwise you can have some issues with pinpointing of the maps. So if you do that, the other good practice, if you can. Now I know lots of people like different workspace names and they've got naming conventions, but if you can, if you rename your workspace to the same room name that you have on those CAD drawings, it'll actually automatically associate those workspaces in that room. So you don't have to manually do anything when you connect them together, but you can manually map it if you don't. And then the easy bit is connecting the two together, and then they all magically sync, and you end up with a map and the rooms all connected. Now, two things to finish off the integration here. There is two Cisco Spaces dashboard apps that we use. One to do any manual mapping that we might need of Control Hub workspaces to Cisco Spaces. And also there is a really cool wizard to help you create the view of your rich digital map. This one here is Spaces Manager. Now, Cisco Spaces dashboard apps are used to configure a whole lot of interesting things. Lots of it on wireless, on retail, on IoT. For smart workspaces, we care about 4. 2 for configuration and 2 for analytics. So Spaces Manager, Spaces Experience, and we'll look at environmental analytics and space utilisation. Space Manager is where we can manually map Control Hub workspaces to rooms if it wasn't done automatically. So here I'm just showing I could map my device to one of the rooms, and then it appears and you can see the different Webex devices and multiples. So this particular room has a room-based device plus a Navigator in that room. The last piece, if you, for those devices that you want to show the interactive map as digital signage, when you configure them as digital signage in Control Hub as you normally would, choose Cisco Spaces as the source, they automatically appear under the Space Experience Cisco Spaces dashboard app for you to then configure. You go edit signage, pops up this pretty cool wizard. You choose whether you want a building view, so an aggregated view of the building and then all your multiple floors, or you want a floor view, right? If this is going to be a kiosk that's on the entry to the floor and people can interact with the map and see which rooms are free, then you might choose a particular floor to view. And then you choose what parameters. And I always turn off CO2 because the Webex devices don't do them by default, but you may have CO2 sensors, maybe the Meraki MT15s. Also, I change the temperature to Celsius, but you guys would leave it at the default of Fahrenheit, and then publish the map. And you're ready to go, and it's all done. Now, one of the big questions I always get asked is, what about MTR? I've configured it multiple times for both, and even both on the same map. So regardless of whether a device inside the room is in RoomOS mode or MTR mode, same real-time visibility, same detailed analytics. So you get all of the capabilities there. Lots of cool stuff coming. Now we are going to look at a little bit of the smart desking. So they've just opened up the early field tries. I've got my 2 Spaces tenants enabled for it. You can do a few things here. You can configure the desk, so you go back on the map, and you can even change different room types to be Hotspacers if you want to, so to be desk-style bookable. You can enable all sorts of different spaces as desks, so if you've got an open area, you want it to be a bookable desk, you can do that. You can book just from the map. There is an authenticated app to allow you to book. It's called Space Explorer. Or you can book from calendar as well. And we've enabled up pre-booking, and we'll walk through that, pre-booking of our hot desk capable devices. The other things that they've got in limited availability and also in early field trials is the indoor wayfinding. So this is with the Cisco and Meraki wireless environments. You will be experiencing that if you scan the QR code. What it does is downloads an app clip to your mobile, and it'll give you those directions. And also, they have a gateway that can integrate with the building management system for smart room integration, and it will use the data from the collaboration devices on the people count and the temperature to optimise the conditions inside the room. So we could have rooms set at a optimised level, so say a base level that's operating during the day. Then as the people count and temperature rises, then we crank up the AC and the ventilation in the room. Then when we see nobody's in the room, we put it back to that optimised level. The energy savings alone in that get the facilities people excited. Now right at the end, we're going to have a look at the new space utilisation analytics. And what's great about this is it takes all of that analytics data that we've got in Control Hub, a lot of it that we don't report on by default in Control Hub, but it also takes all of the other data sources it has access to, the network data sources, the wireless data sources, any of those Meraki cameras, things, and IoT sensors, and uses that to give an aggregated view of workspace utilisation and floor utilisation, which is pretty cool. Now, for those of you that don't yet have Spaces, you don't have Spaces deployed in your environment, a really great option to give that smart workspaces visibility is putting the Navigator panels in that RoomOS booking mode outside every one of your rooms. When we did the UI interface updates here, we purposely chose that familiar traffic light view. Green, we know that room is available, nobody is in that room. Orange, pause. That room's currently available, there's nobody in there, but somebody has it booked, so they might be on the way. Red, somebody is definitely in that room. And so you can see that. I've even looked on our biggest floors. You can see right down the floor the status of those rooms. And so you could standardise that on every one of your rooms. And we'll talk about the standalone navigators. Even if you don't have collaboration devices in the room, you can use this across every one of those meeting rooms that you have. Now, this doesn't just give you that view. It gives you the people count in the room. It gives you the temperature in the room. It gives you the option to go and ad hoc book the room. We can now book for later that day. So you're in the office, I get in at 7, 8 a.m. I want to book the room for 1 o'clock that afternoon. I can go up to the panel and book that room. Lots of great capabilities, and all of this is actually the best. You'll get the most functionality in terms of visibility and booking automation if you use our Navigator panels in the RoomOS booking mode with your MTR devices in the room. So it's supported, all of the capabilities supported on both RoomOS and MTR. Now, shifting gears and actually looking at some of the new ad hoc usage options and room automation and how they complement each other. Now, I mentioned we moved to a primarily ad hoc usage model. Now, initially that was just, first come, first served. You went in, if a room was available, you got to use it. We're now using a big combination of maximum booking time, so you can only potentially use that room and it will auto book the room, say, for 2 hours. We're also using on-site only booking. We're using room booking automation on our larger spaces and on our customer floors. They're the only ones that can be pre-booked in calendar, but they've also now got automation, unless they're the big auditoriums, training rooms. You expect that they don't get debooked because people are going to show up and do big training events in those. And so what I'd love to see is organisations feeling confident enough to start doing things like smaller spaces, your 1 and 2 person rooms, making them more ad hoc. So getting a lot better use out of them than everybody trying to book them in calendar. Maybe those, smaller to medium rooms, making them on-site only bookable, and then it's your larger rooms, those ones that are the calendar bookable rooms, and there's so many ways where you can actually make that model now work for the people in your organisation. Now, I had this, and I had this when I was presenting at Cisco Live Amsterdam as balancing ad hoc with smarter workspaces, but smarter bookable workspaces. But I actually feel with all of the new capabilities that we've just released that it's actually going to be a blending. And then I feel that you'll be able to do calendar and pre-booking of spaces and blending in ad hoc usage options with that as well. So I think I'll get to the point where it's not going to be one or the other, it'll be a blend of the two. I'm going to talk about some updates on hot desking and what I like to refer to as Hotspacers, because I actually think, because in a lot of cases we don't put a device on every desk, that making the small rooms, those 1 and 2 person rooms, hot desk enabled, and so what really hot space enabled is a much more interesting use case, and you can get some really great capabilities, but also some really great control on those. The desk booking beta, so we'll have a quick look at that and what we'll be able to do from the space, but also pre-booking from calendar of those hot spaces. Some of the new policy things that you can do, maximum booking times, on-site only booking, and how the booking automation can actually even make these more effective. So being able to do automated check-in and release of empty rooms. So starting with ad hoc spaces. If I talked about this to you, say 18 months ago, I would have talked about 2 things. I would have talked about ad hoc going in and using a room, and some of the options that we had there, and that's greatly enhanced, particularly in the last few months. I would have talked about hot desking, and hot desking was quite restrictive, and I potentially would have talked about in-room booking, right? Now we've got the ability to do ad hoc only booking on Spaces. We've now just opened up the beta for pre-booking of hot desk enabled spaces or Hotspacing. We've now got book for later in the day. If you had ever enabled ad hoc booking on your Navigator panels, you could only book from the time right now till a maximum amount of time that was allowed that day. You can now book for later time in that 24-hour period. So any time up to midnight of that day, you're on site. I could go in, book that room for 1 p.m. When I've arrived earlier in the day. So lots of great ways that you can ad hoc use these spaces. Hot desking, as I said, is not new, but what is new is there's a whole raft of capabilities that have been added into our hot desking capability. One of the things about hot desking, which is why I think it's a really interesting use case for ad hoc use of space, is when somebody hot desks in to one of the desk devices, and the board devices are now enabled for hot desking, and they're working on enabling it for the room devices, where it will be interesting in smaller devices like the room bar BYODs. Is that when you hot desk into the device, you get one button to push to all of your meetings, any kind of meeting, right? Your Microsoft meetings, your Zoom meetings, whatever type of meetings, your Webex meetings, of course, whatever meeting that you connect into, and I've just run up and I've just hot desked into that device. Now, the way you do that is you either scan the QR code, plug in USB-C, or they've got a new option, which is using the pin pairing code, and you'll see on the 98 series phones, you can actually just use a pin code, so you can use your voicemail pin. Now, those of you that use lots of different messaging apps, I want you to think of the Webex app a little differently. Don't think of it as a messaging app. Yes, you might be using it this week just to message us. Think of it as a companion app for devices. There is a whole, if you have the Webex app on your mobile, not as a messaging app, you can disable all the messaging. You can use it for hot desking. You can use it for room control with room bar BYOD. You can use it for in-app scheduling. You can add a room to any meeting that you're invited to, and that will add one button to push to that meeting. So you're just an attendee on that meeting, you can add a room and get one button to push. You can use it for ceiling microphone mute. If you're in a large room and you're nowhere near the Navigator panel, lots of ways that you can use the Webex app as a companion app to the devices. The really cool one is now pre-booking. So you can now pre-book a hot desk enabled device or a hot space from calendar, and I'll show you how that works. That just hit EFT as well. So here with the 98 series phones, you can, instead of scanning the QR code, you can actually choose the sign-in hotkey, and it will use your voice portal PIN to hot desk into that 98 series 8875 phone. So you don't need the Webex app at all, but people could scan it. Hot desking is now enabled on the boards. So if you've got boards in those smaller, those more huddle style spaces, anybody can run in, scan that QR code and hot desk into the space. It will synchronise not just your one button to push, but you'll get all your whiteboards. And importantly, now added to Control Hub, an admin can end a hot desking session. So if somebody is hot desk into one of the spaces, one of those smaller spaces, and they didn't log out, and you haven't set a maximum booking time, then the admin can go in and log those out. Now, the default is they will log out at the midnight at the end, 24 hours there. Really cool, and there's some nuances to this. I got to test all the different iterations of it last week, is you can now have a hybrid calendar mailbox assigned to a hot desk enabled space. And whether that be a desk or whether that be one of those small 1 or 2 person meeting rooms. Now, important to point out, and I put some of the caveats in the appendix, this is not yet a scheduled room and hot desking. This is pre-booking of a hot desk enabled space. So if I go and book it in calendar, and I've put a few screenshots of what that user experience looks like. If I go book it in calendar, it will actually have a booking on that device that says Vanessa has booked this, scan in to log into the device. Anybody can still use it as ad hoc. So it's still, all the ad hoc options are still available there, but it's booked for me, not booked for a meeting. Once I scan in, then one button of push comes for all the meetings that I've been invited to. So just a little different than calendar scheduling of the space. Now, big changes in how you configure scheduling. Previously, you could configure a workspace. You could leave it in ad hoc only, right? Any workspace, when you create it, add all the ad hoc only. So walk up, use all the instant meeting join buttons are there, and I think there's a slide on that next. You could add hot desking or scheduling, and then you could add in-room booking to scheduling. You can now mix and match the different ones. So you can have a room just as ad hoc booking only, and so we'll have a look, that's the on-site only booking. When you enable hot desking, it now enables ad hoc booking by default so that anybody can walk up and do an ad hoc meeting on, so an ad hoc booking on that device. You can turn it off if you want to, and you can now add the additional layer, which is a mailbox associated with that hot desk or hot space for pre-booking of the hot desk. Lots of updates in instant run-in and use spaces. We've got all of the pairing options that have been extended, as you know, with Miracast and AirPlay, all the goodness there. But we've also done enhancements on the interoperability from ad hoc enabled spaces in RoomOS mode. So Zoom, Google, and Microsoft Teams. On the Google, just GA'd, it actually just GA'd last week, we now do two-way sharing from the device into a Google meeting. For Microsoft, with those Microsoft meetings where you've got CVI enabled in your tenant, we can use that CVI or VIMT details for any Microsoft meeting you're invited to. So not just meetings inside your organisation, any meeting you get invited to, leverage your local organisation's CVI capabilities so that you get the full join experience, sharing experience, all of that functionality. So lots of great ways to use those non-bookable spaces. The other big update here, which is really important, is that we can now get that Navigator panel room visibility outside ad hoc rooms and hot desk or hot space enabled spaces. Because previously, if you wanted to do that, you would have had to create a persistent web app that would go and grab all of the status from that workspace. Now, they don't have to be tied. The room doesn't have to be in a scheduled booking mode to have the panel in room booking mode outside. You just configure it in room booking mode. It gets all of the updates. It knows the device is available. It knows the device is in use. If you do an ad hoc booking, it knows that the room is booked. If I've scanned in using the hot desking QR code, it knows that I've scanned in. So great visibility there. Lots of goodness, additional things coming for the whole hot spacing and hot desking. They're working on the room devices. I'm going to talk about some great things with macros on the navigators, including standalone navigators. So opening up what you can do there. And right now, EFT hasn't just hit beta yet, is the desk booking via Cisco Spaces, but in beta, it is in beta, is the pre-booking of the hot desk. So that's in RoomOS beta. So both of those there. Now the last big section that I want to cover here is some of the huge updates that we've done on the room booking automation side and ad hoc booking. Here, I'll take you through what their user experience looks like for pre-booking those hot spaces. The ad hoc on-site only booking, which is extremely interesting to a lot of organisations that want people to be physically on site to book those rooms and not just using calendar and that whole raft of room booking misuse. The ad hoc book for future time. I'll show you an interesting use case that we had in our North Sydney office. And then how all of the automation now actually even enhances those. So the first one here is the hot desk or hot space pre-booking. When you enable that calendar mailbox associated with that desk device, what it will do is allow you to book both ways. So you can book from the device itself, you can book from a Navigator panel if it's paired to that device or part of that workspace. When you book in calendar, it will put a booking onto that device and you can see that it pops up and says scan to confirm that booking. The same thing will happen if you book from the Spaces map, book that desk and you've SSO signed in as you as a user and that workspace is configured for hot desking, it'll pop up and say Vanessa has booked that space, scan to confirm the booking. You can also use the automation, so the automated check-in and automated release here, which is very important. So, and I specifically tested this because if you've got people that are going to book, say, a 1 or 2 person room and they're booking it for the whole day, you may give them a certain amount of grace, maybe 30 minutes grace period, but if they don't show up to use it, then it should be released for somebody else to use that space. If you sign out early, it actually deletes the rest of that booking. So that booking block that you had in calendar, if you sign into the device as yourself, it'll also put an entry in calendar. Now this entry is a open entry, so it doesn't show you as booked. You can see all of my other meetings are alongside of that. As soon as I scan in, I get one button to push for all of those meetings, as you can see here. So here, once I've booked it in calendar, it's got the details on a Navigator panel or on the device itself. I can then scan, I can plug in USB-C, or I can actually use that pairing code in the Webex app to sign into the device. It'll then pop up with all my meetings. If it's a connected meeting, I'll get one button to push. You can change the settings to see every meeting, so on personal devices. So effectively, once you log in, it turns into a personal device just for the time that you're logged in. You can actually see every meeting, right? If you've got presentation prep time in there, then that can display on your device as well. This is what the new Space Explorer web-based application looks like for Spaces. And there's 2 views here, so you can see there's desks and there's rooms. So I took a screenshot here of San Francisco. Yesterday when I was doing the tech sim, I had some of the screenshots of what I'd done in my Spaces tenant, but very similar. So these spaces are now hot desk enabled. You go in, you use SSO. That could be your Microsoft login, Google login, or a Webex login. Log in here, it will book the desk as you. It only lets you book one desk at a time. So I have actually tried it, and I've even tried across multiple locations. It'll only let me book one desk at a time. I asked, if there are corner cases where you want that, but you do want people booking. You will see visibility of who's booked the desk. You can turn that on or off. If that workspace has a connected device, so a 98 series phone, a Webex desk device, or a board device, you will get that booking on the device as well. Here you add the Webex devices. On my 3, and I should have updated this screenshot, I've got the 98 series phone connected to one desk. I had a pre-bookable Desk Pro connected to one, and I just had a hot desk enabled Desk Pro connected to the other. On the 98 series phone, you can see here, once you book it on the App Explorer, it will then show that booking on the 98 series phone, and that's in beta right now. And they've got it down in the world of solutions. Now, to make this more powerful, this is where you start adding the automation and policy. Right, if you're going to Hotspace enable those 1 and 2 person rooms, you want to set a maximum booking policy. You want people to only, book it for 2 hours, for instance. You don't want them going in there, booking it all day, camping in there, in those spaces. I'm sure you've got desks available where they can do that. Here I set the maximum booking time is 2 hours. This maximum booking you can now apply to hot desking, you can apply it to room booking, you can apply it to ad hoc booking as well of spaces. The ad hoc bookings, couple of additions here. The big one is book for a future time that day. Ad hoc booking only, which allows us to do those on-site only bookings, and the space experience at beta from the Cisco Spaces. With the ad hoc booking, you've got a couple of options. You can do ad hoc booking only, or you can do ad hoc booking with the hybrid calendar booking. With that, you can then, if there was 2 calendar bookings, you could wedgie in an ad hoc booking in between the calendar bookings. So if you see a room is booked 9 till 10, you see it's booked 1 till 2, you could take that middle piece and do an on-site ad hoc booking on that device. Some great things about this. One, as I said, on-site only bookings, which is really interesting to your facilities people for the fact that if people are on-site, there's a high percentage that they're actually going to use the room. It's when the further out they book when they're off-site is the least likely, the statistics have shown the least likely you are to use the room. With the new book ahead feature, it means that you can book any of the rooms for a later time that day. So you just get in early, you know you need the room at 1 o'clock, go up to the panel, go up to the device, book the room for 1 o'clock. It will add that into the calendar, so everybody, if it has a calendar booking, if it's an on-site only booking, everybody will see on the room calendar on the Navigator panel that room is booked at 1 o'clock, and you get all the status. So the availability, occupied and book status of the room. Great use case. We, on our employee floors in North Sydney, and we actually moved to ad hoc only about 8-9 years ago. We were one of the guinea pigs for ad hoc only rooms and ad hoc only across all of our employee rooms. And we've got a big room on each floor, and depending on the floor, it's either a 10 or 12 person room. Now, with a 10 or 12 person room, you do sort of want some bookable capability of it. So what we were allowed to do is we were allowed to write on the chalkboard for that day a booking for that room. And then the cleaners were instructed to rub it off at the end of the day. Right? And so you couldn't book for the next day, you could only book when you're on site that day. We've now replaced that with the Navigator panel in on-site only booking mode, book ahead, so I can book any time that 24-hour period. You can rock up, get into the office, book the room and have it available. The default is book ahead is disabled. So right now, you go in, if you do a booking, it'll be from the time you do the booking, but you just go in and we'll have a look. You can then enable book ahead and it will do any time up to midnight that day. If you couple that with the maximum duration, it'll allow you to book for whatever that is, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever you set that maximum duration to be. Now, the best way to use this is then bring in the automation for all of these. And this is how we can do the blending of our calendar booking, ad hoc booking, our pre-booking of hot desks, because we can, when we pre-book the hot desk, we can also enable the automated check-in and automated check-out. When you enable check-in, as soon as it detects either people in the room or activity in the room, then it will check in the room. Now, there is a counter, so it doesn't actually start until 5 minutes past the hour, and there's a reason for that. We don't want somebody running in just seeing if the room's in use or not, and then running out to automatically check in that room, right? So we wait for the 5 minutes at the beginning of the room. The grace period counter actually starts from the top of the hour or whenever the booking was. And so the default grace period, if you enable automated checkout, is 10 minutes. So from that top of the hour, within 10 minutes, if we haven't detected people or activity, if you have people count turned off, if you join a call or you share on the device, that's considered activity and it will automatically check in. If nobody arrives to use the room or there's no activity, when we hit that grace period, it'll pop up with a message to say, is anybody using this room? They could then say, yes, check into the room. Otherwise, it's going to automatically release the room. It will delete that from calendar. The person that booked the room will get a notification, but we don't delete the meeting, of course, right? If I'm the silly bunny that decided not to come into the office and I'm still want all my virtual meeting details plus all the people I invited to the meeting, it's just the room that's released. So the room's released, made available for anybody else to use. Now you can manually check in and check out. So if you want to check in early, you can check in early. Another really cool thing is if you finish a virtual meeting, and it's a little bit blurry there, but I can see it's clear here, you'll see it on your slides. If you're on a virtual meeting, any type of meeting, your Microsoft meeting finishes or your Zoom meeting finishes, it'll pop up and say, do you want to release the room for somebody else to use, right? You've finished in 40 minutes instead of the hour. It'll release the room for somebody else to use. Now, you can change that grace period depending on the size of the room, I think is what I've seen most common. Training rooms, a lot of cases they don't do automated checkout on training rooms, but larger rooms you might sit 60 minutes. For those smaller rooms, keep it the default of 10. And a couple of things just to finish off here. You can put those Navigator panels in the Microsoft Teams panel mode, but you will get far more functionality if you use them in RoomOS booking mode outside the room and everything MTR in the room. You'll get all of that visibility, you'll get all of the check-in, check-outs, all of that manual functionality. The automated check-in will work with MTR, but you won't get this kind of visibility, so it's the best way. Two last things, and then I'll let you guys go. For rooms, we would love it if you had a Webex device in every room, but we're realistic. We know that's probably not the case. You'll have rooms with no devices. You'll also have rooms that might have other devices in them. You can have consistent panels across every one of your rooms in the room booking mode. And they're just a standalone Navigator panel. You can customize the look and feel. And what is really cool is we're just about to go into beta of macros on the standalone navigators. Now, what that means is you could start doing some really interesting, and that'll be even on the Navigator panels in booking modes with devices in the rooms, you could start doing things like having a macro, because it's all the UI extensions, it's all of the macro capability. It will have the slider as well. You could have a message button to say, hey, I'm outside waiting to get in this room. It'll pop up on the screen and they'll know someone's waiting outside, right? So some really cool things that it's going to open up. Now, there is a couple more slides. I only had 3 on Workspace Analytics. You guys can have a look. The one thing that I want you to have a look at in the appendix is all of the Spaces room analytics reports. You'll get mapping of room size versus the actual people count, the most popular workspaces, the most popular days of the week, hours of the day, shows you all of the stuff that the facilities team thinks is absolutely gold. And when I've been positioning Spaces to customers, the facilities and corporate real estate people, not sold on the map, they love it because it is going to enhance that experience, but they're absolutely sold on the detailed workspace Workspace Analytics. So thank you so much for spending the hour with me, and have a great day.